Jeremy. You've already seen a little bit of a preview of our next speaker, but I'm delighted to welcome our final company. Please welcome Nadia Fisher, CEO and co-founder of Witty Works.
Hey girls! Well, did all the men hear that? Did you feel addressed when I said hey girls? Oh? Okay. Yet we say hey guys at the workplace all the time, right? Okay, here's the problem about language. We know that today, and Riham has already talked about that a lot, that diversity and inclusion is an absolute necessity in today's work world. Otherwise, we will not be competitive. A lot of studies have shown this. And yet we have this problem at the European Fortune 500, only 7% are led by women, and I think you know more or less how it looks at the boards as well. The diversity is not really there. Now, what studies from Harvard as well as the Technical University of Munich have found is that actually language is a big problem in there, because within language we have many unconscious biases. And it goes, in fact, as far as that 70% of our job descriptions or employer branding content does deter diverse talent. Meaning, female talent, people of color, people with a disability, LGBTQIA+, will not feel attracted by job descriptions that are written in a traditional way. Like traditional way, I would say business language, which is used to, right? That we keep on replicating since the 80s. So they will not apply to the jobs, and that's a major problem if you want to become diverse. Now, what's making it even worse in the future, most probably, is that large language models have that exact same bias, do even replicate it and amplify it. So ChatGPT, we tested it, assumes that a doctor is a man, right? So the problem is going to get worse. And the solution here is inclusive language. Now, what does inclusive language mean? It's language that tries to prevent any overt and covert discriminating language, and that's where all this unconscious bias comes in. And for that, we have built an AI augmented plugin that works on web-based interfaces as well as on the Microsoft suite, so that you can finally attract all that diverse talent. You're making sure that you're retaining the talent, because actually they will feel that they belong because of inclusive language. And also, you're making sure that you're building inclusive language, because inclusive cultures, because language builds culture, right? With inclusive language, we can really make people bias aware. And how does our product work? So you see here, when you're writing, so wherever you are writing, the idea is really whatever you do, it's fully integrated in your work process. Well, Witty detects the biased wording, as you would see in the first picture. And then it will give you an explanation about the bias behind that word, because as just said, we're often not aware of it, it's unconscious. As a third step, it will then provide you with inclusive alternatives so that you can adapt your behavior immediately. And finally, we also provide statistics on bias traps that your team is falling into. And that's very important, because we want to take measures in diversity and inclusion that are based on real data. So that's the kind of data we can give you. What are the benefits from Witty? Well, we've seen in talent acquisition, organizations get 3 times more applications from diverse talent, so a huge increase. In employer branding, employees become 12 times faster in writing inclusively. Because if you want to do this manually, and some organizations try to do it with guidelines, it takes you a lot of time. It's super hard to detect because it's unconscious again, but also to try to find inclusive synonyms, it's a lot of research. I mean, how can you be on top of things about linguistic developments in the LGBT community? It's just mind-blowing, right? It moves so fast. And that really saves you a lot of money there. But also when it comes to people and culture, we've seen that the time to value of Witty is really fast. Already after 2 days, people realize their own biases. And that's something that they directly translate into their real life as well, right? When they interact with other people, they meet new people in a meeting, suddenly they think, oh, maybe this person is neurodivergent, or maybe it's a father that educates his children all alone. So that's thoughts that they didn't have before. And with Witty, they start to think in those directions. Well, you see that we have some of our clients, we're still an early stage startup, but very big clients, mostly large organizations in the DACH region, because Witty currently works in English and German, and we're developing now French. So, thank you. Please, what I want to tell you as a message, let's move out of the 20th century when we talk about diversity and inclusion, because often companies are still going into very traditional tools like trainings and workshops, but we need to do the digital revolution here as well. We need to move into digital solutions for diversity and inclusion. So if you want to talk to me about that, after the break, wait, finally the cocktails. Then come to me, thank you.
It's amazing, it's the Grammarly of inclusion.
Exactly!
Yeah. Okay, you said you've got 2 languages nailed. I guess my question, given it's using, I assume, large language models, is cultural alignment and diversity, well, inclusive culture meaning different things with different social values, social systems, and what are the implications of using large language models and tuning them in cultural context to monitor inclusive dialogue?
Yeah, thank you. Super interesting question. Maybe I do have to say we're not using large language models. We couldn't, because the problem is we tried, but it has too much bias automatically in there and you don't get it out of it.
Even more impressive.
Yeah, that's why we had to build it from, you know, the green field. We take a rule-based approach and then top it up with AI so that it can be understood in context. But yeah, the cultural differences are very, very important here. And for example, when it comes to language with disability, we have to work with associations from the DACH region compared to from the US, because it is very different. In Europe, we are person-first minded when it comes to that language, where in the United States, it's rather identity first. So yeah, we are working with associations in order to do so, and then bring this into our algorithm.
Thank you, Nadia. This is super inspiring. I'm curious to the type of feedback. So you mentioned the data you provide to companies, but I'm curious the type of feedback that you get from them in terms of, you know, the implementation of, you know, the new way of speaking and how you integrate that into your. So what your iterative process is like, please.
Yeah. So I must say it's not so easy, right? And I think your question is really to the point, because changing language really goes to the heart. It's like, yeah, but I've always been taught to do it like that. Why suddenly should I change? And also, there's so many wordings and phrases you think are totally fine, like you saw maybe ambitious or competitive, I don't know what I had up there. And to understand that this can be problematic is really hard to understand. So what we do with companies always in the beginning, we do have to do a bias awareness session about bias in language. So to get everyone on board, because often it's like a first part of the company that uses it. It's not rolled out immediately to everyone, but we have to get everyone on board. Because let's say you have talent acquisition people that use Witty in order to make sure they attract talent. Well, the hiring managers, if suddenly their job descriptions look totally different, they're like, what's this? You know, why? And so we have to do a lot of awareness work first in the company.